What is up, everyone? I am Joe DeHoyos. I am host of Beyond the Woodline. Um, I'm sharing this out real quick, so ignore me looking down. Uh, Real quick before we get started, uh, I'd like to let you guys know, for those who don't know, that I am the executive director for the JRG, which stands for the Jevning Research Group, headed up and founded by Mr. William Jevning. Uh, if you guys are interested in looking for this creature that we call Bigfoot, man, hit me up, shoot me an email, beyond.woodline@gmail.com. I'll be happy to set you guys up and get you guys vetted. We do check everybody out just because, unfortunately, there are some crazy people out there in the world. And when we pair people up, we like to be sure that we're being careful with everyone. Also, if you are in a state we don't have a team, we will set you up with somebody. We don't have any trouble or have any problems, setting you guys up. But we would like you to also, research the research is what we always like to say too. And I think that's a pretty good idea. But we have teams in New York State, Florida, Ohio, Michigan, here in Texas, where I'm at, of course, California, Oregon, Louisiana, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and I know I'm missing a few more states. Uh, but if you want to start your own team in a state we already have a team, that's fine also. So just hit me up. And then in the description, I have a friend of mine. Her name is Steffi at Steffi's Creation on Etsy. She makes REM pods and spirit boxes. I use her stuff. She doesn't pay me. I don't get any kind of kickbacks. She doesn't sponsor the show in any way. She's just a great person. But if you go to her site on Etsy, like I said, use discount code Woodline, you'll get 15% off. With all that being said, I know you guys don't tune in to hear me ramble off. And Miss Sandra, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. Sandra has been with me since day one. So I hope you're doing well, Sandra. Uh, yeah, and with all that being said, Mr. Brent Thomas is my guest tonight. He was on not too long ago, a couple months ago, but I needed a guest tonight. I had a cancellation, so you stepped up, man. Thanks a lot for doing that. I do appreciate it. What you been up to? How were the holidays?
Holidays are busy, man, but they were good. Did a lot of driving. I live in the north of Idaho, and my family and where I'm from is the southeastern part of Minnesota. So we drove home over the holidays, and 20 hours of driving got us there and got us back. But we had a good time. It was great to reconnect with family that I haven't seen for a long time, and my mom and just be together. So it was wonderful, man. Thanks. But we did come back for New Year's. I was here for New Year's, and that was nice as well.
Yeah, that's good, man. Well, I'm glad you guys made it safe. You got all your fingers and toes still after New Year's.
Well, in a normal year, I probably wouldn't have ventured it just because you have to drive through a lot of mountain passes going from here to Montana. And, after that, it's pretty flat. But getting through those mountain passes can be rough. But since we've had almost no snow, in fact, there's no snow on the ground here at all in North Idaho, which is almost unheard of in January. In fact, you know what I noticed, Joe? I just noticed this. I just went to the grocery store and it's been unseasonably warm, like in the 30s and almost 40s and stuff, and a lot of rain lately. I noticed the trees are starting to bud, and this is January.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was like, what? And sure enough, I stopped in my car and rolled down my window and looked, and yeah, the trees are making buds. So it's a very strange year. But
Yeah,
my point being that there was no snow on the mountain passes, so actually the travel was really smooth.
that's good. That's
Yeah.
good, man. Yeah, we I went to California, like I told you earlier before we came on. My oldest lives in California. She lives north of LA,
Uh,
up in the mountains, man. She's like at 3,000 feet
ooh,
elevation.
okay.
And from there, we went to Big Bear. And this was like earlier this year. No,
Oh,
last year. Holy cow.
yeah.
Yeah,
earlier
2025.
this year, earlier
And
this year is like the first.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, but yeah, man, there was snow up in the Big Bear Mountains. It was so strange. To, when you change
Yeah.
just a couple of thousand feet elevation, how much snow's up there? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm at about 2,500 feet here.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, I
Jeez.
mean, we're kind of up there too, but yeah. Uh, some of the mountain caps have snow in into late June anyway. around here. But yeah, we're up there a little bit.
That's good, man. Well, cool, man. Yeah, for everyone just tuning in, Brent was on my show 2 months ago, actually, and I needed a guest, and he so proudly stepped up. you know, yeah, he's a good dude, man. I appreciate that very much.
No,
One of the things,
I really enjoy when we talk. You and I have some great discussions, so it's an
yeah,
easy choice for me. If you ever need someone to come in, just let me know. If I can make it, I will.
yeah, yeah. One of the things that we were discussing, or we didn't get a chance to discuss, I wanted to ask you about black-eyed kids, man.
Ooh.
What do you think about that? And have you ever talked to anyone who's ever seen them or experienced them?
I don't think I've talked to people that claim to have seen them, but more in like in a passing situation, not like
Mhm.
showing up at the door wanting to come in, kind of seeing them, which is probably a better way to see them if you're gonna. But the first, not the latter, not the latter.
Yeah.
Having them show at your house is got to be absolutely horrifying. It's a strange phenomena, and it's the weird thing about it is that it seems to occur in spurts. Like you'll hear of a collection of reports will come in about it, and then you won't hear anything for 6 months or a year or more, and then suddenly they seem to resurface again. I don't know. I've always wrestled with what are black-eyed kids, because they seem to exhibit some pretty incredible supernatural feats. Like they'll be outside the door, and then like a neighbor is looking at them over at a house at the door, and then they turn around and look back and they're up on the roof, and
Right.
or people that see them outside and then they turn and look back and then they're not there, they're just like gone, and there's no explanation. So they seem to be, to me, probably something more spiritual, or potentially extra dimensional,
Mhm.
or even demonic evil. I suppose it's possible they could be some kind of extraterrestrial as well. The curious thing about them for me is that all they want to get in, they don't seem to be able to come in, and I don't know what that means, but it seems to they obviously they seem to need permission, otherwise they just come in.
Right.
And but they don't or can't or won't or whatever the deal is, or there's some binding contract in a spiritual sense that they can't unless they're allowed to. But if they, there are stories of people having let them in, and while most of them are, well, there aren't a bunch of them that I've run through, but I've come across a few. Some have ended up in the death of somebody, and some have ended up in like a lot of illness and weird things going on health wise, bloody noses, passing out, waking up, and these kids are gone. Just a lot of strangeness. But what a horrible thing that is. I really wish there was a lot more. I mean, so I'm going to say this, but I don't really mean it, because it means horrible things have happened to a bunch of people. But I wish there was a lot more reports about it, just so we could understand the dynamics of it more. Because with all of this stuff, oftentimes we're just taking, shots at a dartboard. Just, I don't know what it is. Let's throw some darts and just see what we hit. And but with things like with Bigfoot, with a lot of ghostly activity and other phenomena where it's very much more regularly occurring, we get this body of reports, and the body of reports gives us an ability to look at patterns, where you can start to extrapolate patterns from people's claims and things they've seen, and you can notice commonalities, and you can notice some things that seem to be consistent in them. And I think that those are very powerful to us on the outside looking in most cases, because we become almost like the FBI profiling a serial killer. We're looking for these clues. We're looking for these things that seem consistent in them, and maybe that gives us an edge when we're researching them, because we know that when this and this and this happen, they seem to come in. They seem to be really interested. But when this happens, they seem to leave. And so it can help us to understand a behavioral model in order to maybe better research these objects and these phenomena. But with black-eyed kids, it's so sporadic and almost seemingly random, and there doesn't seem to be any commonality for why they show up where they show up. They're just there, or we just don't have enough information. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Totally. Real quick, Anthony he said they must be multidimensional beings, and
Yeah.
that's a great possibility too. I don't know if you know Anthony, great guy too, by the way.
No, I
Uh,
don't. But
oh
yeah,
yeah,
great, great thought.
oh yeah, you need to look him up. He'd be a great guest to have.
Oh,
But
cool.
yeah, there's and what you were saying is there's not a lot of information to really go by, like
Right.
Bigfoot, paranormal, even UFOs,
Mhm.
ETs. There's I don't know if tangible evidence is the right word, but you've got a lot of evidence, and with the black eyed kids, there's like nothing to go by. And like I've tried to research it, and you always get the same, 3 or 4 stories, really, right? And there's not a lot to go by, but I I do believe it's something that's happening and
Yeah.
something that's happened to people.
Yeah.
And I just wonder how many times it goes unreported.
Well,
People
yeah.
probably, people probably like, I don't know what the heck this is or what just happened, who these kids were. And like you were saying, sometimes they just show up. I've heard a couple of reports where like it was snowy and blizzard, and these 2 kids just show up. I'm waiting for my mom. I'm waiting for my dad. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just strangest stories. And like I said, there's only a handful of stories out there, really.
Yeah, there
Uh,
isn't a whole lot to go on. And so, I mean, it's just any idea is just as valid as any other at this point because we don't have any data sets really to model after except for these sparsely reported events. But you're right. I mean, that's the other thing. And this is true for all of the paranormal 40 and supernatural topics is that how many things have we heard versus how many people have had experiences that they'll never share, and that actually kind of wounds me in a sense because honestly this journey has always been about me hoping to have an understanding of what the hell's going on here because and I think I said this the last time I was here, but it's like a lot of people look at the paranormal like, well, that's just where things went sideways, well, that was a glitch. But I think this stuff is incredibly important because it's demonstrating the true fluid and dynamic nature of the reality we live in. It's not the box, it's not the concrete rules, that there's a lot of dynamics that we're just not aware of currently.
yeah.
And so all of these people that have these experiences that may never ever come forward, and to each their own. I know some people just it's hard to talk about something you haven't been able to come to terms with for yourself. And then, worrying about the social ramifications of being, well, I saw this or I saw that, and I think it's probably gotten better in the last decade or two than ever before, where people feel more comfortable, at least have platforms or avenues to discuss this stuff without fear of ridicule and having their reputations destroyed. But still, I would love to hear everybody's story if that's possible. And that's really one of the things I love about doing a podcast is just having the opportunity to talk to people from all walks of life that are having these experiences and to dig into them and just say, well, what did you see? Because oftentimes people will be like, well, the interview that I just did with Tom Izzo, that's the newest podcast interview that's out there on the Paranormal Portal. It's like, well, when I was young, I'd wake up and there was this ghostly apparition standing in my doorway, just standing there, and he was smiling at me. And to him, he shared the story, but then I had to dig into it. What did he look like? What did you see? What was the smile? Was it a creepy smile? Was it a happy smile?
Right.
Pleasant?
Yeah.
What was he wearing? How did he appear? And we dug into it more, and that was really awesome to be able to kind of have a backseat view to his experience and to be able to question him about it. But it really breaks my heart that there's so many people out there that haven't or won't or aren't maybe comfortable in coming forward, and all of the information we won't get because of that.
And like Anthony again, he says people have no explanation for what happened. It's probably why they don't say anything.
Right.
And because people who have Bigfoot encounters or have paranormal, they can really fool themselves. You know what? Maybe that's not what I saw. Maybe it was a bear,
Sure.
walking, running on 2 feet. Maybe the vase falling over for no reason. It was, you know,
Yeah.
that's been there for 10 years. No one's ever moved it. It finally fell over. And
Yeah.
you can just almost fool yourself or make excuses.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it. And Don here says, I always wondered why black eye kids, if they are trying to fool us, why not have human type eyes, right?
Yeah.
So, you know,
That's true. And there's so many questions that I have about that phenomenon. I find it very fascinating. And that gentleman was absolutely right. It's like how do you explain something you can't possibly understand yourself? Now we're kind of in the club. We talk and deal with this stuff every day. We're digging into it. We're researching it. And for us, for you to bring up Black Eyed Kids, and I can go, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and we can have an articulated discussion back and forth about it. But just take somebody from a different walk of life that doesn't deal with this stuff, and they'd be like, Black Eyed what? What?
Yeah.
What the hell I mean, because what we take as common knowledge for them is just like, you might as well tell them they have, a sprout coming out of their eyebrow, it's just this foreign concepts that they'd never dug into. So yeah, I mean, how do they get from experiencing these impossibilities to, hey, I want to share this on a podcast, I want to talk to somebody about this? Probably not, because they don't even want to have experienced it themselves, much less reliving it by explaining it to somebody else.
Yeah, and I run into that all the time too. And I'm looking for guests, and I tell people, "Hey, can you come on and share your story?"
Yeah.
They're like, "No, because I've been made fun of so much."
Yeah.
And it's really hurtful to some of these people. They're like,
Yeah, it is.
uh, they've told people that they know and trusted, and they've gotten made fun of it for it. And so
Right.
why would they want to come and tell a stranger?
Yeah, that's just it. And it's not like you can just go to your normal best friend that you talk about transmissions and engines with and just to start saying, hey, but I saw a Bigfoot. Because there's a whole different paradigm involved in that, and it's a leap of faith for the listener. And if they're not already into the subject, that's going to be their gut reaction, because I think people defend their paradigm. That's their safe place. This is the world they live in and the world they know and understand. And if you're trying to introduce something absolutely different to that, they're going to be like, okay, well, you better get your meds. I mean, that's the first thing that people think, is there's something wrong with you. And to, also remark to the other comment that was made about, questioning your experience. I think we all do that. I've had several experiences myself, and every one of them, even though I'm into this stuff and I've been pursuing it for, literally decades, whenever something happens, the first thing I do is sit there and question, go, okay, well, all right, let's look at this. Let's look at it objectively. Is this really what I just experienced? And invariably, if I'm convinced it's paranormal, then, I have to admit it is. But then to take somebody that doesn't believe in this, well, sure, they're going to go back to their safe space where the world made sense,
Right.
and just kind of discard it, put it somewhere else,
Right. Yeah. It's just easier for them to write it off and just say it was something else. Like Anthony was saying right now too, that he said the strange fact is there are things that go bump in the night, and as science catches up and new equipment is created, we will soon be able to detect these strange unidentified phenomena. And people are happy with not having that equipment. People are happy not having that validation.
Ignorance is bliss, right?
Exactly. And it's funny that you say that too, because I've spoken with people who have had strange experiences, and a lot of them say, "I wish I never had it. I wish I was ignorant to it."
Yeah. Well, then you hear the other spectrum. The other side of the spectrum is like, when you're covering stories or when you're researching this stuff, invariably online, you'll get into these discussion groups and you'll see these posts people make. It's like, well, I don't believe in ghosts, but this one time, and they'll go into this incredible story of these impossible things happening and how they were there witnessing it. But then at the end, it's like, but I don't believe in ghosts. Well,
Yeah.
what do you believe in? Because you just experienced one, it's pretty powerful how people will protect their safe space, the place that they know and feel comfortable in. So,
And um, so did I ever tell you the story? I don't remember if I told you the story the last time you were on, about a young lady that was swimming.
I don't
Uh,
think so.
she was swimming, and there was a crevice down at the bottom where she was at. So she was young. I was actually going out to do some Bigfoot research, and I stopped at this convenience store that's way back in the San Luis Forest somewhere.
Mm,
And the friend I was with, he had this big truck at the time. It was black and white. He called it the Yeti, and he had Bigfoot stickers all over it.
cool.
Um, and so she saw the truck. I came in and grabbed some ice, and she's like, "Hey, whose truck is that?" And I said, "It's a friend of mine. He's out there getting, whatever." And she's like, "Okay." She goes, "I saw one time, right?" She told me her Bigfoot encounter. It wasn't really anything spectacular, but it
Mm.
was still a cool encounter, nevertheless. She was up at the Big Bear Mountains in California. Uh, she was hiking. She looked down the side of the mountain, and she saw this big guy, looked like he was in a ghillie suit, but she goes, he was maybe a couple hundred feet away. She goes, but he was so big, and to be, 200 feet away, she was like, he was freaking huge.
Mm.
She banged on the side of a tree. She goes, I remember the shows had just started coming out. And she goes, I picked up a big stick. I hit the side of the tree. She turned around like a linebacker, looked at her, and then started off. She goes, he was so fast, right?
Wow.
That wasn't the story that really captured me. She goes, but I got something else that happened to me when I was younger. She said, I used to go to my grandparents for the summer, and I can't remember where she said, if they were in California or wherever, but there was a body of water, and there was like a little, what do you call it? Like a little pier, right?
Okay.
And she would walk to the end of the pier and dive down, and she goes, at the bottom there was this big crevice, and she goes, and I always wanted to swim down there. She goes, but I was always too little, to make it. She said she was like 15, 16 years old, and uh, she started. Thought she was old enough now, a strong enough swimmer to make it to the bottom. Well, as she's getting closer to the bottom, and she's about to get to the crevice, she realizes she's running out of air, and she's like, I need to go back up, right? And then she says that on her way up, she knew she wasn't going to make it. She just knew that she had no more air. And at that point, two hands came up in front of her face like this, and they opened up, and she said this big air bubble like engulfed her head. She drank it in. Well, she breathed it in, and she was able to make it to the top. So,
Wow.
what do you think that was, or what do you think happened to her?
Well, the first thing I would default to is some kind of divine intervention. It's like something angelic or some guardian angel, perhaps, or
Yeah.
even a benevolent nature spirits of some kind. Do you mind if I sidetrack a little bit off that
No,
note?
no, go ahead, go ahead.
There's a story that I covered ages ago, and it was where somebody was out on the dock it was this little kid was out on the dock in this lake where the parents and family were all out fishing and stuff, and the mom was in the cabin or whatever, and she was out on the dock just dorking around, and well, she really didn't know how to swim, and she fell in the water and was sinking like a stone, and she was like drowning. She knew she was drowning, and flailing, couldn't do anything, and then she said she was starting to get weak, and suddenly this girl, spirits, glowing girl is what I think she described it as, appeared in front of her and said, just kick your feet but go towards the light, just do that. And so she did, and she got to the surf and was able to grab onto the dock and free herself and get out of the water. And there was this big mystery about what it was, but as she got older, she started researching that area, and then she found out that a little girl had drowned in that very space, and it was like the spirit of that little girl showed up to show her how to get out, how to get to safety, and so, but it could still be a divine intervention. It seemed to have at least taken the guise of what that little girl that drowned looked like, and because the person saw a picture, it was like, that's the girl, that's the one that appeared to me, and so, in any case, yeah, I mean, that sounds very profound, though. Somebody just his hands and open it up and creating an air bubble. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's just like, this is definitely a world still of magic, even though we don't understand it maybe like our ancestors did. There's still amazingly magical things going on around us, and that a lot of it is represented as this paranormal weird stuff that we dig into.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were talking off the air, and I tend to believe it's something divine intervention, an angel, whatever. And whereas before I would have only said it was a mermaid or some kind of cryptid.
Oh, sure.
But yeah. But like I said, I've been on this journey the last few months, and I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? Why couldn't it have been an angel?
Right. Well,
And
yeah, and and maybe it's just a term, but it still is a divine intervention. So, like,
right,
maybe we don't know really what angels look like, because the description of angels is, in a biblical sense, they're almost horrifying looking. They're like
right,
these wheels with eyeballs on them and stuff like that. And it's like, what the hell is that? Sounds like a UFO. but they were angelic visitations with a message and stuff. But I don't think that they necessarily look like something. They just, maybe they appeal to what we would most accept. And so, to see a little girl when she's a little girl drowning made sense. Like that was already, maybe more of a connection. Or in the case of seeing the hands and then the bubbles created, well, maybe the hands were shown to her as a way to make that more presentable, like somebody was intervening. And so because the one thing is that we interpret our experiences, and perhaps if this is a divine intelligence, which I believe it is, then it's presenting things in a way that makes sense to us, that we can accept. And that's maybe where the idea of these winged humanoids come from. It's just a gentle, amazingly beautiful visage. And so but what do they look like? Maybe they don't look like anything that we could understand or comprehend, but they appear to us in ways that we can manage and handle. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of sticking with the angel thing. My nephew, when he was little, and I don't know, he's maybe 5 or 6 years old, but he would go to church with my mom. And it was a typical big Catholic church. But he told my mom that he would see angels standing in the church, but not standing in the church like a group. But they were so tall he could only see like to their knee. But he don't see like they were out of the roof. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had a friend of mine, I've been trying to get her to come on the show, but she doesn't want to do any kind of interviews, but she's she has abilities, gifts, whatever you want to call them.
Sure.
And so her son at the time was going through a hard time in school and personal life. Like her and her husband were getting a divorce, and the teacher had been telling her he's having trouble in school, right? And she said one morning she just kind of woke up and her son was at school, and she was like, you know what, I really think I need to send him some help. So she said she was saying, send angels, send angels, send angels, right? So after school, she went to go pick up her son. The teacher came out, and the teacher goes, hey, I need to tell you something. She was like, okay. She goes, I don't know how you feel about this. She goes, but I have, these abilities, these gifts, these spirits. She goes, the classroom was filled with angels today. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, I just thought that was pretty cool, because she said, I didn't say send angels like one time. She goes, I just kept repeating it, send angels, send angels, send angels. She goes, the classroom was full of angels today. So
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think faith is incredibly powerful, and it's in terms of this stuff, there's so many stories out there of people calling on their faith for protection from these horrors that they encounter, and it works.
Yeah.
That
exactly. Yeah. I mean, there are countless stories out there.
Right. Whether even with UFOs and alien things that are freaking people out, they'll invoke the name of Jesus or prayer or something in that regard, and suddenly boom, they're okay, and these things are gone. They're taken away from them. So faith is incredibly powerful. It's just an amazing thing, and I think we've often maybe in our modern westernized thinking, we often think of this, well, it's just an exercise of hope. Like religion is an exercise of hope, but it's not. It's more than that. I think it's not to try to be overly philosophical or whatever, but I think it's reaffirming and strengthening our connection to the divine, the divine love, the divine source, and I think that this divine mind wants what's best for us, but we have to reach out and connect with it. So faith is so important in all of this. It really is.
So let's kind of change gears a little bit too, just a little bit.
Okay.
What do you think about past lives?
Okay, so for me, this is where I probably deviate away from a lot of traditional religions. Is that I've come to believe that, and forgive me, this isn't me trying to piss off anybody out there. I'm not trying to poop on your beliefs or your views. I'm just sharing my own. Because it doesn't bother me to do that. But I think that often when I was younger, I was like, what is this all about? Why are we even here? And I think that the purpose for being here is to, I guess, be the best version of us that we can. And I find it hard to believe that we can do that and learn everything that this world has to offer in just one cycle of life. I think that this is like a school, and there's different grades of this school, and maybe that's different levels of life that we experience here. Some people are incredibly poor and very destitute, and they learn from that. Some people are incredibly rich, and they maybe learn from that or don't learn from it. But all of these experiences that we have, I think, bring us to a more divine understanding. I think that that might be the reason that we're alive. And so I look at the complexity of life here and the complexity of people and interpersonal relationships, their relationship with everything around them, the world around them. And I think, man, I don't think anybody could nail this in one shot. I just don't think that that's possible. But I think this was all given to us to bring us to a more enlightened state. And so I think that to me, reincarnation makes sense because I think that it's the working of the graduating of our soul to a higher level. But I just don't think we nail that in one shot. I don't think it's possible. This world's too full of incredible possibilities and complexities that may take lifetimes to accomplish. So that's, in a nutshell, my personal beliefs. I think there's definitely something to it. Now it gets really kind of cooked when you start to think about time. Does time actually exist? And what if we don't have past lives or future lives, but we are living all of our lives in this one moment, different versions of our experiences in different timelines, because time may be instantaneous. It might just be a frequency thing. It might be something else. There's something called non-Euclidean space-time, which suggests that time isn't a linear thing. It's like the every moment from the dawn of the universe to the eventual implosion of the universe is happening in this one now, and it's our awareness that moves through this now, in this phases of the now. And so maybe all of our lives are happening simultaneously, and there's different parts of us that are focused in these different directions to try to find a more centered divine version of ourselves. I don't know.
It's funny. I was thinking about time travel today. You're talking about that. That's pretty good. That's pretty
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to throw out the make it too complex just for the sake of an interview, but I don't know. I think this is all really powerful, important stuff. And again, to each their own. And I'm not trying to, again, offend anybody with whatever you believe. You might be right. I might be absolutely wrong. And
Yeah.
I'm aware of that. I don't pretend I have the answers. I only have my personal truth, and it's shaped by my own experience and my own thoughts and my own conclusions, but it doesn't mean I'm right. So,
And real quick, I just want to thank everybody for participating. I got Big Dog right here.
oh, nice.
Big Dog is here. Uh, my uncle. Thank you,
Oh,
Uncle.
that I saw the name up there. I was like, oh, I bet you they're related.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, Don. Don's a Bigfoot guy. He's in Maine.
Oh, very cool, Don. Nice to
One of
meet
my
you.
old friends. I don't know how long I've known Don. I know him forever. But
I
yeah,
wanted to say
man.
hello to Barbara. She's in the chat. Barbara Moore has been a long time viewer of my show. She's a sweetheart. We've met several times in real life, and she's just a wonderful person.
As a matter of fact, it was Big Dog's truck that I was in when I went to the St. Mesa Forest and I talked to that young lady. Yeah,
Oh, okay, okay.
yeah, yeah. It was his.
Oh, very
It was
cool.
his truck. Yeah, he had the Yeti. He don't have the Yeti anymore. Poor thing.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
what's he got now?
I don't know what kind of truck he's driving now. I think he traded it in and started doing some hauling. So
Oh,
yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah. Um, what is your thoughts on the Hat Man? Just about to me.
The Hat Man's a pretty interesting phenomenon because a lot of times we hear of shadow people in the Hat Man, and people think, oh, they're evil, you're horrible, horrible things. However, the Hat Man, in a lot of instances, seems like this almost benign observer. It doesn't mean it's like haunting people, but he just becomes apparent and visible. And it's like he's just sitting and watching. And I again, I don't pretend to know what he is or what they are, these Hat Men, but they don't seem to be malevolent, but they don't necessarily seem to be benevolent either. They're just, it's like they're observers. There's so many people that have been witnessing the Hat Man, and they're just like, please stop it. I'm tired of waking up and seeing you standing there. And then the thing will look and then just turn and walk away, and they don't see it again. And it's like, well, If it was evil, it would just say, well, screw you, get a load of this, I mean, they don't seem in many regards to be these evil, horrible things, although people are usually pretty freaked out by seeing a shadowy visage with these, the flat brimmed hat, maybe a cowboy hat, maybe something like that, or wide brim fedora of some kind, and then glowing red eyes, which is real common in the reports. And I don't pretend to know what they are, but I don't think they're the same thing necessarily as the shadow people, because shadow
Yeah.
people are supposedly these pretty vile things, according to a lot of traditional logic. I've not experienced them personally, so I don't know. But yeah, I don't think the Hat Man is a bad thing. I just don't know what it is. What is it watching for? What is it doing? Is it some, I don't know, some kind of stabilizing influence? Maybe it's just a some kind of celestial observer or something. I don't know.
Hmm. So I saw him when I was 21 years old in
Okay.
my mom, when I was living with my mom in my bedroom. Uh, Several years later, my sister's little boy, he was like 5 years old. He's like 20 now. But yeah, when
Mm,
he saw me, it scared the hell out of him. He didn't want to come up from underneath the bed. And
yeah.
then several years after that, my niece, she lived there. It's funny, we've all lived with my mom at one time or another.
Mhm.
Uh, but my niece was living there with her husband, and he saw him all in the same bedroom. This all happened in the same bedroom.
Oh, so it's
Yeah,
very
so
location specific. Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know what was going on with that, or why that happened. But my brother, he's a pastor, and by the third sighting, he's like, you know what, had enough of this, so he blessed the room.
Did that take care of it?
So far, that's been, I don't know, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, somewhere in that ballpark was the last time.
And
Uh,
you saw it.
yeah, yeah.
Well, that's
But
good.
I also had a friend of mine. Uh, and this is close to 20 years ago. Also, um, he had rented this house, and when he rented the house, uh, when he went to go look, because they saw the for rent sign there. Him and his wife pulled over and went into the house, and they found the lady who owned the house. She was a younger girl, also. She said her dad, passed away, and so she was just kind of fixing the house up and going to rent it out. He goes, so we're working on the kitchen cabinets because I didn't think anything about it. They came to an agreement right then and there. She says 2 weeks later we're moving in. He says as we're moving in, one of the neighbors across the street says, "Hey, you guys got Jack's house?" He's like, "I don't know who Jack is." He goes, "Oh, Jack's the old man that had the house. He had terminal cancer.
Mhm.
He put it into it in the kitchen. So
Oh,
yeah, yeah. He just he just knew that it was his time, and he was tired of suffering.
yeah.
So he put it into it. So it kind of freaked his wife out a little bit. Not too bad, but he started flicking the lights on and off, saying, "Jack's gonna get you. Jack's gonna get you."
Oh, no.
Yes,
Oh,
and they had some major, major issues in that house that involved the Hat Man. And
oh.
still to this day, he still blames himself for all of that. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
because he thinks he invoked something by doing that.
Could be. Yeah, could be. And just maybe it was the fear that was rising from
Mhm.
it. Because fear seems to be a commonality in a lot of haunting stories. For whatever reason, and I don't know how that correlates necessarily to the Hat Man, but maybe it's one and the same. Because I'm not saying Hat Man couldn't be diabolical or horrible. It's just there's so many cases of where they just seem benign, like they were just there. But they certainly look horrible. But the thing with hauntings is generally they start out real subtle. They start out almost unnoticeable, like little weird things. Maybe it's a weird sound. Maybe
Yeah.
it's just a misplaced item suddenly where it doesn't make sense. It's like I never put it anywhere else. Why isn't it there? And then maybe it shows up again, maybe it doesn't. But then it kind of creates an uncertainty. And I think that uncertainty, or that's less grounded feeling that people have when they notice things are getting strange, and then you feel uncomfortable, and maybe it's a progressive surrender to this other energy or intelligence or energy, whatever it is, whatever these dark spirits are, or problematic spirits. But that it almost requires some form of permission from the experiencers, and some oftentimes the permission is not like, oh yeah, you can do whatever you want, scare the hell out of us, that's fine, but I think it requires a surrender by the people living there to empower the phenomena. And once they surrender their dominion of a place or space out of fear or out of uncertainty or out of apprehension, then it empowers this other intelligence to expand and to become more potent. It's like there almost seems to be something necessary for that to happen. And it almost harkens back to the Black Eyed Kids, like they can't come in. Well, it's like spirits don't seem to be able to do stuff unless they're surrendered to, or and fear is certainly a surrender. When you're afraid of something, you're surrendering your sovereignty to it by not feeling empowered. You feel like something has power over you. Maybe it diminishes our aura, maybe it diminishes our claim on a space or something, I don't know, but that does come up a bunch.
And this is the only time that I've ever heard of someone seeing the Hat Man like outside of the house.
Yeah.
It was like it was in the street. So he saw it twice. One day he was home by himself and he walked by his bedroom because it wasn't like it was like a flash. Because I saw a person walk by in a long trench coat and black hat.
Wow.
Because it looked just like as real as anybody else, right?
Wow.
Another time, like his wife wouldn't stay there at night. So, and we work nights. So when he would come home, he would call her, "Hey, I'm here at home," and she would come over because her father, his father-in-law, lived only a few streets away. So
Oh,
she would come home, whenever Richard would come home.
sure.
So Richard was parked in the driveway one day, and he was looking in the house. The kitchen light was on, and he saw him walking in the kitchen. You know,
Mhm.
but he called his brother-in-law, and they came over and they looked in the house. Nobody was there. So a few weeks after this happened, he was talking to his father-in-law. They went to go have steaks out in the backyard, and he was telling his father-in-law about all these things that had happened, in the house, and him seeing this guy in black. At the time, he had no idea it was a Hat Man thing, but he would
Sure.
describe him. And his father-in-law was like, I saw him. He was standing outside in the middle, well, not in the middle, but like off the sidewalk, staring at your house. He was walking his dog, and he would walk the dog to the next street over from Richard, and he would walk down that street and made like a U-turn and come back in front of Richard's house. He said when we walked across, his dog started going crazy, ballistic, and his dog was a very good dog. It was a
Mhm.
box. And when he saw the man, he's like, well, you know what? When I come back around, I'm gonna see what the guy's doing. Why is he staring at Richard's house? And he said when he came back down the street, the guy started walking away, made a right, and when his father-in-law got to the end of the street and looked, the guy was gone.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yikes.
yeah, that
That's
was kind of
creepy.
strange. Yeah,
That's pretty
that's
creepy.
yeah, but I've never heard of him being outside of anyone's house. I always heard of people seeing him in the bedroom or in the house at the very
Right.
least. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe but it wasn't necessarily attached to the property then at that point. It was just, it was more, because usually a lot of times, like it is like you said, it's like they seem to be localized, like that one bedroom where everybody had the experience with the Hatman in the other house, and then it was blessed, and that's fine. But there you go, Barbara. That's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to turn it around, but yeah, I mean, there's plenty of maybe it wasn't the same one, maybe it wasn't the same thing,
Yeah.
but it's hard to say. But maybe there's something to do with the ground around there. A lot of times people attribute hauntings with something had to have happened in a house, or someone had to have died there. Something tragic happened. Maybe a dark spirit moved in and became part of it. But there's new houses that are haunted. And I think it has more to do with the land than at that point. Like that, I don't think the land forgets. Even though there's a new house on it or something like that, the land will remember.
So, have you ever heard of instances where a person has seen a spirit, ghost, whatever, apparition, but only saw it like one time and nothing else ever happened?
Yeah, those.
What do you think that's about?
I think that some spirits are just transient. I think they just wander, and perhaps if they're earthbound for whatever reason, or they're just locked in this plane, then maybe that's how they entertain themselves. They just like, hold my beer moment. Hey, check out that house. I'm gonna go see
Yeah,
what I can do. And
yeah,
and I think they just pass through sometimes. And I think there's, certainly ways to protect against that, but I don't think most people know about that stuff, about protecting your home from spirits and stuff like that. But I think they just wander in and, like I said, hold my beer and then, raise hell for a week or a day or, and one night, and then they're gone again. I think that not all of I see again, we often we get this term ghosts and we attribute it to, oh, it's spirits. It's that's just all they are. And there's good spirits, bad spirits. There's people that were spirits, and that's what ghosts are. When they haunt us, they're ghosts. But I think what we understand as ghosts could be many, many different things, including maybe potentially beings that exist in our plane of existence, but they're out of phase with us. Maybe it's a frequency thing where we can't quite see them, but they seem to be aware of us, and they maybe sometimes they're not. Maybe they're transdimensional entities, maybe they're extraterrestrial in some regard, but more energetically based than physical. Maybe there's any number of things. And then there's, the idea of people creating ghosts. And I don't think they do it on purpose, but again, I think that they create tulpas or egregores. Tulpa is created by a person. Usually it only exists within their head, but sometimes they do manifest in the world
right.
around. But egregores are created by groups of people, whether intentionally or not. And that's just, oh well, the story of the bridge where the distraught mother cast her baby into the water. Maybe it never actually happened, but by enough people believing it happened, it created an energy that became the phenomena. And
Right.
I think that speaks a lot to our potential, that we
Mhm.
can create things. And so I think the term ghost is really largely misleading because it could be any number of things that we experience in a ghostly manner, but are not maybe the same one and the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think so. In the Dallas Fort Worth area, there's Goatman's Bridge. I'm sure you probably heard
Oh,
that.
sure.
Okay, there's more evidence that that didn't take place
Right.
than it actually happened. As a matter of fact, it's probably never happened. The whole story behind the Goatman's Bridge,
Right.
but there's plenty of people who have gone there and got evidence. And I think
Yep.
just because of all those people who have gone there, they too have created something or invoked something or invited something, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And now that place has paranormal activity there,
Yep. It created the activity. Sometimes the legends create the phenomena, and I really believe in that. I really do. In fact, I think that, this isn't exclusively the case, but I think there's a fair percentage of hauntings that are actually created by the people living there. And again, I'm not saying it's intentional, like let's summon a spirit kind of thing, like, an occult practice. But I think it's just by virtue of that we do release energy at all times around us. And part of those energies are good energies, and some of them are bad energies. Anger, rage, sadness, grief, any number of negative emotions could coalesce eventually into something and create problems.
But this is my cousin Leo. He says Jake and I want to go to Goatman Bridge. You need to take Jake to go Bigfooting is what you need to do, Leo.
Well, there's that too. But yeah, Goatman Bridge would be cool. If you do, bring some
Yeah,
cameras. See what you
yeah, for
find.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got there's a bridge in Leo, if you're still listening, go out by Bear Creek, past of Katy. There's Patterson Bridge, Patterson Road. Yeah. Jake said he will go alone if they go. Oh, cool, man. Just keep a camera handy. I want to see that. But so you talked about summoning energies, right?
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on Ouija boards? Are they good? Are they bad? Or is there nothing to them?
Okay, so here's my take on Ouija boards, and I did a TikTok video and Instagram video, I think, but definitely TikTok, and kind of outline my thoughts on this. But here's the thing: I don't think by virtue of I got a Ouija board hanging on the wall over here. It's been there for years, and it's never been used. It's fresh out of the box, but it's decorative. But I don't think by virtue of a board having an alphabet on there with numbers and goodbye and a yes and no makes it evil. I think it's no more dangerous than a Homer Simpson placemat for your kid's cereal bowl. I mean, it's just a piece of decoration. Now, I will say that maybe 99% of the time people use Ouija boards. Maybe nothing happens, maybe something happens, but it's real bizarre. But I do think that there's a real risk in Ouija boards. And here's the rub for me is that, first of all, if you look at a Ouija board box, it says recommended for ages 8 and up, which is absolutely insane. Do not let your kids go up and summon grandpa or try to summon grandpa because that's not good. But so in any esoteric practices, and I'm speaking of shamanistic, I'm speaking of, witchcraft, Wiccan, magics, Rosicrucians, any of them, when they deal with gearing a practitioner towards communicating with spirits, it's not something you just open a box and do. It's something you train for, and you work and develop your energy, your protection, there's so many aspects, both physically and mentally and bodily, spiritually, that you have to become robust with in order to do it safely. Because the danger with the Ouija board is that when you're using it, you're creating a blind channel of yourself, because you are physically interacting with this object and saying, is there anybody there that would like to come talk to us? So you've opened the door to whatever's there. Or, even if you're more specific, you can't assume that there's a whole lot of integrity with dark spirits. Like they don't care what you think, they just want to come through. Well, you've already opened the door by saying, come through and talk to us, because you're physically connected to this. You're asking spirits to come through, and they are now interacting in a very real way with you and your energy and your spirit and this board. So you've created this open door for anything that might be dark and nefarious to have a highway right into your life. And I also don't believe, first of all, to how can I say this, to more responsibly do this kind of thing, you should know about protecting yourself. Again, as I mentioned before, that means spiritually, mentally, physically, and of course your atmosphere, protecting the environment, tuning the environment, warding against dark energies. And that can be with, religious prayer and ceremony, or it could be with, objects, bells, sounds, smells, such as incense, any other number of things. And then dragging a piece of plastic over goodbye isn't really a way to close that. You should never open a portal you don't know how to close. And when you're using a Ouija board, you're opening a portal of sorts, a portal of communication. And you can't just drag a piece of plastic and say, okay, goodbye. I dragged it over. Goodbye. We're done. Because if it's something dark and powerful, that's just not going to do it. You've just green lighted something to come into your world and into your experience. And by saying goodbye, it may not feel like saying goodbye. So you have to know how to close those things and close them effectively. And that can be, again, rituals, spells, prayers, sounds, any number of modalities, whatever it resonates with you spiritually is what you should use. Like if you're a devout Christian and I say, well, here, wave this sage around. Well, that probably isn't going to mean a lot to you in a religious faith manner, because faith is the key to all this stuff. You should use things that resonate with your Christian spirituality, prayer, in the Lord's Prayer, invoking, the angels, the St. Michael's prayer, all kinds of things like that, holy water, incense, etc. Things that would, empower that to close. And so I think that the Ouija board is probably largely a bad idea. Not that it couldn't be used responsibly, not that it can't be, and not that it isn't used and very effectively in some cases, but the risk is so huge. And the fact is that you're tampering with things you can't possibly understand. So that's my big warning about the Ouija.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think you have to be really careful, because you yourself become that conduit,
Yes.
And I think that's the difference. In a lot of people say, well, you're doing an EVP session or you're doing the Estes method. Yeah, well, you're not really the conduit at that
Right.
point.
Exactly. You're not creating the connection. You're not directly involved. You're involved to a degree. And maybe I do investigating as well. And I always consider everything I do as a possible avenue for an attachment to happen. So I'm very careful about that in, prayer and protection and warding myself against that. And then again, at the end, closing it, like prayer, protection, all of that stuff, because, I just think it's important whenever you're entering into communion. But when you're using these things, is anybody there that wants to talk to me? I'm looking for Grandpa Joe. Well, a dark
I
spirit.
hope not, but yeah,
Yeah, you know what I mean? Nah,
not
not
yet.
fair enough. Maybe I should Grandpa Phil. How's that?
There you
Uh,
go.
but you don't know what you're talking to. You really don't. Even when I'm investigating, it's like we call out to specific, names as it relates to the history of a place, but you don't know if you're talking to that or if you're talking to Beelzebub or something. I mean, and they again don't have they're not compelled to be honest. There's no compulsion in the dark evil stuff that they they got to play by the rules. They will come through if they can, and they will make your life a living hell and cause problems for you or your loved ones. So is it really worth it? Be careful.
Yeah. Good advice, sir. Good advice. Well, Brent, we're coming up at the end of the show. And first of all, man, everybody in the chat, thanks a lot for participating. You guys did great, as always. Brent, you want to tell people how to find you?
You can find me a lot of different places. I have two very different shows that I do. The podcast is out on all the platforms: Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, Pandora, Google Play, etc., etc. Just look for the Paranormal Portal, and you'll catch. I'm on season 6 now, episode 29, and all of my seasons are at least 52 episodes, usually more. But there's lots of back catalog to listen to if you're interested, and that is available everywhere. But I'm also hosting a show, a live stream on YouTube and Rumble and Twitch, but Twitch doesn't do much for me. But I'm trying it anyway. But that is more of a variety show where I have 2-hour segments every Wednesday, Friday, Saturday at 7 p.m. Pacific time, 10 p.m. Eastern. For 2 hours, we dive into all kinds of aspects of the paranormal, and like to have fun and laugh and have a good time. I have a wonderful chat community, and I'd love to see you guys come in and hang out over there with us. So that is on YouTube at Paranormal Portal. So just go youtube.com/Paranormal Portal, and you'll find my channel. Probably the best place for all connections to the Paranormal Portal is to go to paranormalportal.net. It's paranormalportal.net, and that has links to the podcast that I was mentioning before, the YouTube and Rumble live streams, and email and stuff. And if you want to be a guest on my show, if you got a bunch of stories you'd like to share and wouldn't mind being a guest on the podcast, on paranormalportal.net, there's an interview me button. You just click it. It pops up a calendar with potential dates and times. And if something works for you, just click it in there. It'll email us both, and I'll get together with you. So
Cool, man. That sounds very, very cool. I like that format too that you got. I need to put that on my website. Leo, I know about the old Walmart in Galveston Island. Yeah, it's something I've been wanting to talk about. I need to get somebody from Galveston on the show because Galveston's full of haunted stuff
is
going
it?
on there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know if you know anything about Galveston, but you ought to check it out, man. It's
I'm gonna
crazy.
have to. I'm gonna have to now. I didn't know anything about it, but I'm gonna definitely look into it.
Well, cool beans, Mr. Brent. I do appreciate you coming on. Like I said, man, you saved the day. You saved the day today. Thank you
Well,
for doing it.
so I always have a pleasure talking to you. You're a great guy, and you do a great show, and it's an honor to be here. So thanks for letting me come on and fill the hole for tonight.
Thank you, sir. I do appreciate it. And everyone else, I will be on next Monday. Don't ask me who I am going to have on. I don't know. I never know. Uh, but yeah, you guys tune in next Monday. I will see you. Brett, hold on real quick. And everyone else, you guys have a great night and be careful out there.